This is one of my favourite sites in the rocks because it's actually the oldest building in the centre of Sydney. This building is called Cadmans Cottage and it was lived in by a man called John Cadman. John was a convict who was sent from England for stealing a horse, and eventually he worked his way up to become the superintendent of the governor's boats. So that was quite an important position from a convict to somebody who worked for the governor. His wife Elizabeth lived here with him, and she was also a convict who was sentenced to Australia for stealing some brushes and knives. Buildings like this are really important heritage reminders that tell us about the life of people from the past. We can see that this building is built out of big sandstone blocks made out of the rocks of this area, and that's why it's called the Rocks today. You can see it's painted with a special paint called whitewash. Some of the architectural features are the shingle roof. You can see that it has a small wooden tiled roof, and they're called shingles. This house is a Georgian house because it was built at the time of King George. And Georgian houses are usually very square and very symmetrical, which means everything lines up. You can see it has small windows because glass was really expensive in the olden days. So they have window panes, not big pieces of glass. The other thing you can see is it has chimneys. And because in the olden days, people had to light fires in their house for light, for heat, and also to cook their food on in the kitchen. If we get closer, we can see that above the door is a carving that says GR. This stands for George Rex. Rex is an old-fashioned word for a king. So this tells us that this building belonged to King George. It was a government building. And because the main government architect was Francis Greenway, we think that this building was probably designed by Francis Greenway. So in the late 1970s, the plan was to demolish this building and turn this area into a place of skyscrapers. It's really important that we keep old buildings like this to remind us of the past and how people used to live. So this building has a heritage protection order on it. We can see that it has some really important details. It's a fine example of a Georgian building. It's a fine example of an early colonial home. And they did lots of archaeological studies around here that showed us lots of artifacts from the past to show us how important this building was to the history of modern Australia.